want to talk a little bit about interactive technologies to help in the engagement and consensus part of the geodesign process. I'm with the firm PlaceWorks. We're a California-based firm, community planning and design, and we presented here at the Geodesign Summit for the past couple of years. And I want to take you a little bit on a journey of where we've been with geodesign and then kind of where we're at, how we're using these tools, and kind of our approach. So this, I always start with this. This is a great definition of geodesign, something that I think really speaks to our practice as urban planners. It's, geodesign is an iterative design method that uses stakeholders' input, key stakeholder input, geospatial modeling, impact simulations, real-time feedback to facilitate holistic designs and smart decisions. So in essence, that's kind of, the dream of a planner when we approach projects. This is all part of that mechanism in our journey. So, a couple of bullet points. Geodesign can help planners provide an objective database foundation for decision making, integrate processes across disciplines, improve efficiency, create a collaborative framework, and reduce uncertainty. But the big one is empower citizen engagement. In urban planning, that's half the battle, right? I mean, we make designs and we develop policy. But without, community engagement and support and consensus, a lot of those times those policies fall flat. So yeah, everybody has seen this diagram, and I noticed yesterday that my version of this diagram has people of the place on the bottom. And I know that I've seen some later versions of this diagram on Carl Stein's A Framework for Geodesign book, where people of the place are on the top, and I agree. People of the place is the most important part of this process. So yeah, people of the place. So that's what I want to focus on today is sort of our approach to geodesign and how people of the place play a significant role in that process, right? So geodesign at PlaceWorks, we incorporate geodesign across all of our disciplines. On that very first slide I had showed, PlaceWorks is an urban planning firm, a design firm, an environmental firm, and we're trying to use geodesign approaches and concepts across all those disciplines. And we thought about geodesign as being simple applications to engage public and foster involvement. We've continued to develop geodesign and geospatial-based tools as Esri's technology is maturing and changing and pivoting, and we're trying to keep up with sort of that thought process. Some of the items that we've done, focus on green score methodologies. That was a concept that David Early presented here at the Geodesign conference about 4 years ago. And it was something that we actually started working on before we got involved with the geodesign movement, but realized that it sort of fit really nicely into geodesign. So again, this is the green score. We started developing this about 2013, 2014, and like I said, David Early presented it here on 2014. And after that, that Geodesign Summit, we were exposed to a lot of new technologies that Esri was just coming out with, stuff that they were thinking about that are very much geospatial or GIS tools that were fit very nicely into the urban planning kind of framework and process. Green score, I'll just rehash a little bit of this. This is 11 focus areas. We have 70 special indicators that we've developed. And we modify these based on our client's need and the project scope and context. Can model both existing and future development scenarios. So, our approach is very, systematic, very much a geodesign type of framework where we identify a metric, customize the methodology, quantify the units of analysis, collect data. It's all about the data, right? We heard that yesterday. Conduct analysis, set the thresholds, and summarize the findings, right? So very, very, very much a geodesign type of approach. At least that's how we kind of look at it. But after we did that presentation, we started thinking about web GIS and how that's a platform, right? So yesterday, I think it was Devin and Christy had mentioned how they're using the web as a platform, right, to engage the community. One of the biggest problems that planners face is when we do engage with the community, sometimes we miss a segment of the population that we really want to target, right? Those are those families that they don't have a Saturday morning to come come participate in a community workshop. They're at soccer practice or soccer games or gymnastic events. So we started thinking about this web GIS and the web. The web is open 24/7, right? So it's always accessible. So we started to look at these technologies as being sort of our platform for engagement. And I shared this in the past, but we call this Green Score 2.0. So after that 2014, when we introduced Green Score here at the conference and we saw some of these tools, we started thinking about, well, how do we apply this concept to some simple tools, just really simple tools, to get the message out, to communicate a concept. And this is one of our early on applications we did for the general plan update for Menlo Park. And it's a real simple web application where you activate proposed developments and see what their impacts are. And the city was very concerned with traffic and jobs and tax revenue and water consumption. So it was simply just a trade-off type exercise that the community, as part of the general plan website, can go in there and discuss their concerns or look at these impacts of these changes. And then, again, we were introduced in 2014 to GeoPlanner, right? So GeoPlanner was really exciting for us, and we built a couple of applications. That first one was of Venetia. I'll go back one. A demonstration application, just looking at sea level rise impacts on their current development policy. And then in Menlo Park, we did a land use. We were doing a land use update. So we used this tool in a shredding exercise. It wasn't so much for community engagement, but with the decision makers, with the general plan, the TAC, right? The committee of stakeholders that come alongside the city and kind of work through the general plan issues and concerns. And then we even use GeoPlanner is a multifaceted tool where you can look at parcel level or project level details, but you can also run these weighted raster overlay models. So for Butte County, we did a site suitability, right, where we sat with the technical advisor committee in a shredding type setting and talked about trade-offs and came up with different solutions of where the best locations would be based on, obviously aspect, a slope aspect, but also about like land uses and proximity to residential and, prime agricultural land, because in Butte County, it's, an primarily ag and cattle ranching. And so it's sort of this mix, right? So, we started thinking GIS is not just for mapping anymore. It's, it's for consensus and outreach. And we've heard that all yesterday. And, start using surveys, right? So online surveys as part of the general plan update. So this was a simple survey that we did for Redondo Beach. And, we get outcomes, right? So we were able to, poll the community, have them go out and do these exercises and get some very substantive information from the people of the place, right? Going back to that people of the place feedback. And we get outcomes, So this is, and I'm sure everybody has seen this. This is the back end of Survey 123, where you can start to parse through the information that you get. We even started developing custom tools, right, to allow you to comment on a map, some context, right? I think Devin showed his map.local yesterday, and that's sort of that same notion, right? To get a map out there and to get people of the place to give us comments, right? People that live there and understand that area. And just another example of that. And then we start, building Geodesign or, GeoPlanner type tools where you can make your own scenario. And we've showed this in the past, Deanza doing a reuse of a park and, make your own sketch, right? Give you some ideas of trade-offs of your land uses, just to get people engaged and get kind of playing around with the nuts and bolts of what we're doing as far as on a policy side. And we took it, Livermore, we did some priority, this is all online, priority ranking, and then, again, modeling, and then we took it a next step further where we're starting to show some very discrete metrics. So, just kind of, again, it's sort of that notion of sort of getting people invested in the process, because, that really leads to a better outcome. And then also just talking about story maps and, these living documents. This is a complete general plan for the city of Temple City. They wanted it to be very stripped down. And what's interesting is when you go to take it to this kind of format, you have to kind of write to that format. So we did a very streamlined, stripped down general plan, and the community actually really liked that. So it's been an engagement platform insofar as it gets more input and more kind of people looking at that general plan as an approachable document rather than this very complex document. This is just, interactive maps, kind of engaging and making it more dynamic rather than a static platform. And, again, another story map example of a parks project that we did for the LA County, just getting that message out and like, what are we doing? What are the points? What are the issues? And sharing that, in a kind of an online accessible format. And another example. This one was interesting. Desert Horizons, where it's a HOA out in Palm Desert that needs to reconstruct their pools or rehab their pools, and what they wanted to do with that. And what was interesting about this is we had a community workshop, but it's a homeowners association where the residents primarily do not live in Palm Desert, snowbirds, so they're off-site. So we needed to find a vehicle to be able to have them participate in the outreach. So we had here on the bottom, the outreach exercise and the concepts that we ended up posting online. So you have sort of this virtual experience of where we've been so far and the meetings that we've had. And then at the very end, they get to participate. Just like the people that were there in person, they get to participate remotely. So we thought that was very compelling, because we had quite a struggle to get consensus on feedback for the resident property owners. And this is another recent one that, just City of Fountain Valley, just looking at preliminary opportunity sites and a virtual tour, right? So you have an option of either taking the tour yourself, driving around the city, or going ahead and going online and actually doing sort of your virtual tour. And we kind of broke this down. It's another story map, and it gives you a map, and then we integrated Google Street View so that you can actually explore that, right? So it's about as close as we could be to being there, is being able to search around. And then at the end, you take a survey, right? What are your feelings about these different opportunity sites? And this is sort of just another version of this questionnaire, project specific, opportunity site specific. And but so going back to Temple City, so we did their zoning code and we updated it, but this is not a online zoning code. This is an online feedback, right? So the city wanted to introduce the concepts of the zoning code and get some feedback. So we have like the big changes by topic area, and at the very end, give us some feedback on some of the stuff they still needed to get some more information about. They weren't entirely sure that they had implemented the zoning code to reflect the needs. And then, whoops, what happened here? Okay, and then so the final is a case study, right? So we're doing a project for Los Angeles County, right? So Los Angeles County is going from a precinct-based vote system to a vote center solution. And the reason why I introduced this is because this was interesting. So yesterday we talked about, or Jack had mentioned cloud infrastructure, or GIS infrastructure, geospatial infrastructure. And I thought, this project kind of fits some of those criteria. So I thought I'd investigate that a little bit. So the vote center placement project is, we conduct a spatial analysis, do an outreach component, gather information from the communities, target special interest groups to kind of see what their needs are, and then build an analysis criteria based on the feedback we received. And the whole purpose of this is to create a better voting experience, right? So vote centers, you don't have to vote at the school down the street. You can vote anywhere in the county. You could be at work, vote by your work. You could be at the zoo. So, the project team has been talking to the zoo. Visit the zoo and vote, right? So kind of interesting concept, but it's something that the county really wanted to move forward on. And I think it's only 3 counties in the state that have gone this far so far. I think Sacramento, and I think maybe it's Madera, are the other 2 that have opted for this. So as part of this project, we had to identify 2,000 vote centers, and then you just need 1,000 for a voting event, right? So we had to gather the potential vote center locations, do preliminary site research, so desktop review, ground truth, so we had to visit these sites, the last candidate sites, and gather data, review suggestions and comments we received from the public in our meetings with the CBOs, and then ultimately a final identification. Let me go back one. So I had posed this question: is ArcGIS Online a geospatial infrastructure? The vote center database, everything is done online, right? So it's hosted on ArcGIS Online. We have a vote center recommendation tool, story maps for outreach, operations dashboard to monitor our field crew as they went out and did these assessments. We used Workforce to schedule those site visits, Survey 123 to collect the information on the site, and then we have a site suitability tool. So I'm going to kind of move along. So this is a platform where we used it's a public website where we asked people to give us recommendations for for vote center locations. And we got over 1,200 vote center locations. 10% of them ended up being in the final database. We assessed 10,000 potential locations. Now, we did a lot of this over a desktop review, and this is an application we built to basically have our team do some remote sensing type of research where they actually did some online research, calling, and phone calls, and internet research to whittle this down to 2,500 sites that we ended up site assessing. And we did this with a special, Survey 123 application. It had 100 data points per survey, right? So 2,500 sites, 100 data points that we collected. We had a team of interns and junior staff out there for 4 months, scouring the entire county, and it was quite an undertaking. Happy to say last week we finally finalized that database, and we're moving forward with the analysis section. And this is sort of the dashboard that shows that, right? So it's kind of all connected. Again, this is all one single feature service on ArcGIS Online that we're kind of tapping all this information off of. And so the final stage of this is the site selection, right? And so we have these 2,500 places. We're going to get down to 2,000 with ultimately using 1,000. We use all these layers, and we created a web app that is all-inclusive, right? It has the instructions here, right? So we have a link to the web, a story map that shows the methodology of all the demand layers that we use. And this is the story map. Then a tool with a tool interface instructions embedded into the application. Tells you how to model suitability. So you model suitability with the raster, right? So we have a raster suitability analysis in here. You pick and then you do a site selection, right? So here's that raster. You build your methodology. You like the way that looks. You can zoom in, look at different areas. And then once you're happy with that, we have a special geoprocessing widget that you actually basically copy over your weighting and run that site selection tool. And then we have some tools to summarize it, right? So what this is used for is we have a TAC and an ADCOM, a technical advisory committee, and an advocacy group that we meet with regularly, and they're actually using this, and we want to get their input, right? Our technical advisory committee are experts in line theory, and I thought, well, what do you mean line theory? Like line queuing theory and voting behavior, right? And getting them to get their hands on it and look at it. And ultimately, when we run this analysis and get a preferred analysis, then we yeah, we end up with our 2,000 sites. And so, again, this is sort of, I grabbed this, I took a picture of one of Jack's slides yesterday. Is this, geospatial infrastructure? I kind of think it is, right? It's a platform for sharing and collaboration and solving problems, mapping and analytics, server-based. It's cloud-based, but server-based. So is this geodesign? I kind of think it is, but I'd be willing to debate that. And that kind of concludes my my proposal today. Thank you.